Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, the 16th of March. We're still in 2026. It is 1:41 p.m. in St. Kitts and Nevis, that is in the Caribbean. It is, of course, a very hot day. The sun is out, and I walk across the city. It's kind of breezy, but it is hot. But at least I didn't sweat. So it's a real nice Caribbean day. You are listening to Freedom FM 106.5. Our listeners say we are world-class radio at its best, and we boast that we are world-class radio at its best. This is Issues with your host, Coach Adrian. And as you know, it is true that I'm glad, very, very happy to have you on my show. As usual, allow me to reach out just before we begin our topic. I have two things to reach out or to talk about. And it brings to mind Clint Eastwood, you know. I know if you know the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Let me speak about the good first. Let me hear my dedicated listeners in New York, the Big Apple. I received a call from one of my brethren from Lucia, living in the Big Apple. Oh, we had a nice time. We spoke, and it was like a reunion. I didn't know my brethren were listening to me as far as New York. I know I have a number of listeners in Atlanta, Michigan, and some even as far as Washington. That is great. C'est comme là, moi souhaiter hot un bonjour, moi hope hot ni un bonjour et que moi demander hot pour chebe bien, chebe fort, changer qui côté hot hier, qui moun hot ka représenter Saint-Lucie. Now, the bad and the ugly. As we speak, like we said last week, the world is at war. If you have your phone with you, if you have your television, you will know that the world is at war. There is tension, there is uncertainty, and things are getting worse. Supply chains are being disrupted as we speak. Prices are going up, and people are dying. The BBC estimates that as of March 15, that is yesterday, more than 1,800 people had been killed in Iran, mainly innocent people, that is civilians, over 3 million people displaced, that Americans and Israelites killed are understated, and more deaths are recorded in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Oil prices have risen for more than 40% and continue to rise. It's already happening here with us. I went to the pump and I was told that it had risen twice and it's expected to rise again today. So general prices in the Caribbean have started to move up. That is, of course, because of the rising oil price and rising shipping costs. In fact, a number of shipping companies have given notice that their prices will increase because of the cost of supply and handling and shipping. Mm-hmm. So we are already feeling it at the pump. Very soon, we will be feeling it at the supermarkets. But of course, remember that is happening at a time when prices had been galloping as if it was mad. So you can understand that it is going to be difficult. But remember, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, remember that I told you that in a previous talk show, the IMF had already forecasted that 2026 would be hard times. The IMF forecasted hard times in 2026. Now, there are many explanations, many perspectives, many forecasts, and that is explanation with respect to the cause and the course of the uncertainty and the turbulence, or if you want, the fearful things that are happening around us. Among the many, what I call the enlightenments, I just want to just briefly touch on 3 of them just before we move into our topic. The first one comes from the economists. The economists, they always have something to say. The economists generally believe that unstable political shifts and unstable political behavior are the main factors contributing to what they call the unparalleled level of uncertainty that the world is experiencing today. That's what some economists say, particularly market economists, or classical economists, or neoclassical economists. Now, I did some research, and I looked at the Rastafarian ideology, and this is what I came up with. Rastafarian ideology explains the increasing global uncertainty as the chaotic, inevitable decay of Babylon. The progressive instability, the theology argues, is part of the world moving towards the sure fall of Babylon and the triumph of Jah. Now, if you want more about that, apart from reading the literature, you check the lyrics of Burning Spear, Max Romeo, and of course you would be very acquainted with my favorite piece, War in a Babylon. That's a beautiful piece, War in a Babylon. The Melodians also, they have some beautiful pieces. Well, of course, Bob is the father of that prophecy, if you want. And you can check Culture. Culture has a beautiful piece. And there are a number of others. But I would ask you if you can just check a number of Bob's literature, a number Burning Spear, and particularly the Melodians. Now, the Caribbean is about 84% Christians. That's according to my research. And that makes it, of course, one of the most heavily Christian regions in the world. Now, so I quote from them. They say Bible prophecy describes the ongoing global uncertainty as birth pains in quotes. And they're quoting that from a book, Luke chapter 21. And they say it signals the end of the world as we know it. So we have 3 perspectives. We have one from the economists, one from the Rastafarian theology, and the other one from the Christian theology. Okay, so much for prophecies. Now, let's run. Let's run like Julian Alfred. We always run like Juju. The fastest woman in the world. Don't forget that. 100 meters in 10.72 seconds. And when she was interviewed, she said, that's Lucia pressure. Let's begin. Today, I want to introduce the 2026 St. Kitts and Nevis IMF report. I want to introduce our discussion on the 2026 St. Kitts and Nevis IMF report. But first, let me just explain, question and explain. First, question and then attempt to explain. Let me first attempt to question and then attempt to... What do I question? Why all the social media hypes? Why all the social media discussion? Why all the social media noise about the latest IMF report, St. Kitts IMF report? Why all the hype? Why all the noise? I ask myself. And then I came to the point, perhaps you need to give the listeners an explanation of what this IMF report, or any IMF report for that matter, is all about and its relevance to a country. But particularly in the case we are talking about here, its relevance to St. Kitts and Nevis. So why is the IMF report a very important document at this juncture in the Labour Party's government in power in St. Kitts? You see, just like a business, its operation must be externally audited. Now, of course, a business has an audit department if it is very large. It has an accounting department, or the accounting department is part of the auditing department. It audits itself and whatever. But even if it has its own auditor and its own audit department, a business cannot audit itself. So although it may have the technical skill and the technical know-how to do that, you need, if you want, an outside oversight. So here's a practical example. The annual general meeting of the company, by practice, will not be held without the audited account. In other words, we need an outside auditor, an outside regulator, an outside supervisor, an outside oversight, an outside overseer to see, or if you want to authenticate, what the accounts and the auditing department says of the business. Now, it is in that vein, the IMF in essence is the external auditor for the 191 member countries of the IMF. And they have all signed up to that. They have agreed to that. The IMF would do a regular, what we call article formation. Sometimes it depends on the state of the country. It might be done once a year or twice or once every 2 years. Now, so what we have before us is one of such done on St. Kitts. The IMF staff reviews the economy, reviews the financial system, reviews government operation, reviews the business sector and the labor market periodically. As I said, it depends annually or every 2 years. The article for review which shows the state of the economy. It would show the state of the economy, the strength of the financial system, and by the financial system here we mean every financial intermediary, banks and credit unions, insurance and whatever, social, any operators that deals with finance, money and banking and quasi-banking. Also, it would show the state of the fiscal economy, and that is very, very critical. What we mean by the state of the fiscal economy, when we speak of the state of fiscal economy, we're really talking about the management, if you want, the production, distribution, and whatever, consumption of process between government management of revenues and expenditure. So in a sense, that is government business. It would give you a state of that. It would also give you the state of the government, the government's debt. That is, to what extent how the government is making use of debt, that is accessing. Now, mind you, when we talk of debt, debt is buying money. How you buy money and how you pay back money and whatever. Because money itself is an asset. So it will look at the debt stock. It will look at the impact of government decision. Now that's very important, because the government decision is very critical, both for the efficiency of their own fiscal economy and to a large extent of, if you want, to enable the the economy itself. And of course, that also has implication for the business sector and, of course, the people. By when we say the people, we're really talking about the households, the individuals and the household, or sometimes in economics we say the consumers. So the IMF, that review would tell whether the country is growing or failing, or the country is at a steady state, or the country is, if you want, is slowing down, or the country perhaps is just neither going forward or going backward. So why is the IMF report critical for a government like St. Kitts and Nevis as of today, March 16, 2026? You see, Article 4 reviews are used by international investors. They are used by financiers, just like the board, just like the members, the shareholders are looking for the audited statements for them to look at how well their business is doing. That is, whether they have faith or not in the internal accounting department or the auditing department. So the international investors, international financiers, creditors, and other governments, they use the IMF report as the litmus test. Now, hear what I say. They use the IMF report as the litmus test, the deterministic test to determine, one, whether to do business with the country or not, whether to lend them any money, whether to call back money that they may have lent them and they feel that they are getting into a state where they don't have the capacity to pay. So before they declare a haircut, then they can say, pay me back my money. I'm calling back the loan. They use it also as a litmus test to decide whether they want to invest in the country, whether they want to pull away investment that they had already committed themselves. Say, for example, the Ritz-Carlton. So Ritz-Carlton was supposed to be to come here and say they have signed document and whatever, they have broken ground and this and that and that. Now, all these are just the preliminaries leading to the actual hard investment. During that time, and even when the hard investment have started, the investor can say, all of these things I'm saying there, should I hold back investment on the project, or should I pull back or pull away from investment in that country? So don't take that a joke. This IMF report is excessively important. So also the investors, the financiers, the creditors, or other persons or other institutions or groups that the country or the government wishes to do business with, or the private sector wish to do business with, they would use that report to say, okay, should I freeze monies that I have earmarked for these people? That project I wanted to go into it there. Should I stop it? Should I freeze the money? Should I hold back? Just like when there is a war, when there is tremendous uncertainty, investors hold back. And of course, that's the same thing you do at your home. If there is something that just come up, but you wanted to invest into something, you say hold back. This is what you call risk management. So we have always said we can look at the government in the context of the home. That is important. That's a very, or in the context of a business. So the investors, financiers, creditors, they would look at the report, the IMF report, and to decide, even if I have already earmarked resources for business in this country, should I hold back? So that is why the report is critically important at this juncture in the history of St. Kitts. Now, a good IMF, so to say all of that, meaning that a good IMF report is critical for St. Kitts and Nevis as we speak. Why? Since in a special way, this 2026 IMF report is Dr. Drew's and the St. Kitts Labour Party's, so to speak, report card before election 2027. Did I say that? Did I say that? And if I said that, that is correct. Let me just repeat that. We can see this IMF report as if it was a report card. You are at school or you are at a university, at a college, and you have been doing all your work and whatever. You are waiting for exam. You are waiting for that report. So this report, the IMF report, that 2026 report, I see it therefore as Dr. Drew's report card before election 2027. Now, one might ask, Peter, why are you saying all these things? I'll tell you why. You see, the World Bank, another institution in Washington, officially stopped what we call the Doing Business report and its ranking on September 16, 2021. The Doing Business report was the other, if you want, sister report or companion report that international business, the creditors, the financiers, etc., and government use along with the IMF report to determine whether to do business with a country. But that report, the last publication was Doing Business Report 2020. So in a sense, the September 16, 2021 report publication was the Doing Business Report 2020. So the only thing that the investors and the only thing that the creditors have to rely on to determine, if you want, the credit worthiness or the investor worthiness of a country is the IMF report. Having said all of that, I hope that I have not bored you with all this information, but I hope that you are not bored, because my reason for giving all this detail before we begin to speak is to underscore why on this program, Issues program with Coach Adrian, I will take a very serious and professional look at the 2026 St. Kitts and Nevis IMF report. I will allow very open dialogue on the report. Why would I do that? Because I plan to take my time to give a professional, a balanced, a fair, and non-partisan information about the report as I extract the data and the information from the report. Having said all of that, having set the matter straight, now let's get into business. It is now 1:46 p.m. in Sugar City. You are listening to Freedom FM 106.5. This is Issues with Coach Adrian. Today, we are introducing our discussion, our first discussion on the IMF 2026 St. Kitts and Nevis report. Now, let's begin. What we have access to, if you have, for the many who have access to the report on the internet, the many who have gotten the report through circulation, I get the reports, I get all the reports from every country report I get from the IMF. I get all publication from the IMF, releases, report, discussions, papers, whatever. But I know that this report is hot because many people have sent that report to me. And some of them would say, look, Coach, I sent you that report, but I expect you have it already. So it is out there. But I want to just bring something to your attention. What we have before us is called, and I quote, the St. Kitts and Nevis Staff Concluding Statement of the 2026 Article 4 Mission, March 2, 2026. This is not the IMF report. Let me just repeat. This is not the IMF report. Let me repeat again. This is not the IMF report. For the Article 4 review, it is not that is not the report that will follow from the Article 4 review. The IMF report is usually about 40 to 50 pages. It includes long data series, comparative data sets, graphs, charts, assumptions, analysis, projections, forecasts, and case studies, etc. That's what the report is. So what we really have before us is what we call an end of mission statement. An end of mission statement. It means some of the data series, very short data series, can change. Some of the conclusions there can change. Of course, usually some of the basic information are not changed, but the fact is they can change. So this leads me just to explain how the publication of the report takes place. The IMF team goes for the economic and financial audit of the country, called the Article 4 review. The government gives consent to making the end of mission statement public. So what you have there is because the government of Dr. Drew have agreed to make it public. That is the preliminary, very summarized report. Because as I said, the full report is about 40 to 50 pages. The views expressed in the statement that are before you are those of the IMF staff. Let me just repeat that. The views expressed in the statement of the document, I think is a 6-page document before you there, are the views of the IMF staff. Once the staff is back in office, the review team would prepare a report to the IMF Executive Board. I know what I'm talking about. I did 20 years at the Central Bank. I went on IMF reports, IMF missions. And not only that, I went to school at IMF. I know what I'm talking about. So they would present that to the executive for discussion and finalization. The final report would be presented back to the government, to Dr. Drew, because he's the Minister of Finance. And then the government would decide whether it wants to make that final 40 to 50 page report public. That is the process. The government can say they're not making it public. The government can say make it public. They have the right to do that. But normally most government would make them public, because if you end up not making it public, you can become a rogue country. And in fact, you can embarrass yourself. And I have said it before, and I will say it again. in spite of all the pressure while I was at the central bank that we placed on Prime Minister Denzel Douglas, because a large part of his debt management and the large civil service that he had, the size of the government payroll, and his management of the Citizenship by Investment Fund, Denzel Douglas never withheld one IMF report. Even when they took him to task on the political platform, and he say all kind of things. I ain't quoting what he said, but I know what he said. He never withheld the report. Those who came after him have sought to hide the IMF report. But you can only do that to your own detriment. Why? Because information is available from many sources. Particularly, we are in the information age. You don't have to go to a library. You don't have to go and beg people for a book. Information is all about. In fact, your greatest challenge is for you to be able to decipher which one is good information and which one is misinformation. And moreover, any technically equipped economist, any economist who's well equipped, he knows how to extract information. You don't have to give me the information. You can hold the IMF report if you want to. But even if you hold the IMF report, I can still come here. I can still come here in that studio and speak about the report, because I know what technique to do to use historical data and to measure the likely state of the economy. That is the tool that a good economist has. Okay. All right. So when the full report is available, I hope to host at least 3 or 4 talk shows on the report, because I told you I'll take my time to discuss. 1, I want to discuss the economy in full. 2, I want to discuss the fiscal situation of the Dr. Drew's government in full, because that is largely highlighted in the statement. And I want to discuss the major IMF recommendations and the prescriptions that are in the report. Even in the few pages, there are some very pointed, very hard recommendations already. So you can expect what to expect in the full-blown report. And I hope to conclude my discussion with, as usual, with a high-level panel. Okay. So how well we are doing? It's just 2 o'clock. It's 2:04. So today, I will treat our first take as an introductory discussion on the 2026 St. Kitts Nevis IMF staff statement. Notice I say staff statement. And I will continue when the full report is available. Now, for today, for the rest of the time that we have, about an hour, I want to highlight the preliminary findings on the economy. And if we have the time, I want to zero the rest of the talk show on economic management issues. And if we don't have the time, then that's how I operate here. Wherever we stop, next week I continue. So let me just go into what the preliminary findings on the economy. I'm quoting, real GDP growth is estimated to have slowed to 1.5% in 2025 and is expected to pick up to 2.2% in 2026. The slowdown in 2025 reflects weaker than expected construction activity despite a recovery in tourism. Over the medium term, growth is expected to strengthen to about 2.5. Okay, let us just pull out what is the information in this quotation, and let's reference it with the latest. Now, remember I told you that the IMF does a World Economic Outlook twice a year, one in October and one in April. So we are expecting a new one in April. But around January, when the October one is done, around January, IMF would do what you call a World Economic Outlook update. And they send that. I have that. They send that to me. So I'm going to speak about the data or the information on the performance of the economy in the light of the update, the World Economic Outlook, the update of January 2026. And I want to just put it in the context of the world economy, Latin America and the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean, and of course, St. Kitts. Now, I'll do that comparison, say, for 2025, 2026, 2027, as the preliminary IMF statement that we are referring to. They gave you a preliminary projection for 2026 and 2022. They said about St. Kitts grew by 1.5% in 2025. 2026, they expect it to grow by 2%, and 2027, it will grow by 2.2. Of course, remember, whenever IMF makes a projection, we must bear that in mind. It is what we call, in economics, a passive scenario. A passive scenario is where you are making a projection and you are saying in layman's terms, if the policy decisions that they make, whether it is with respect to taxation, respect to expenditure, or labor, or wages, or whatever. In other words, if they continue doing what they are doing, that will happen. So if Dr. Drew's government continue to do what they are doing, if the economy continue to perform the way it is performing, it is by 2026, it will only grow by 2%. Now, if it continue to doing what the same thing is doing, the same way it is doing it, in 2026, in 2027, it will grow by 2.2%. So basically, the assumption is that you are holding that, you are taking a passive look. It is not an active, it is a passive. The active says that if you do something different out of the box, it will change. Okay? So remember, all of the projections, the IMF projections, are what we call passive projections. Okay? Now, the world economy, according to the update in 2025, grew by 3.3%. Latin America and the Caribbean grew by 2.4%. The Eastern Caribbean countries, that is the OCS countries put together, remember the OCS countries does not include Barbados, that is the central bank ECCU countries. They grew by 3%. St. Kitts grew by 1.5%. That's what IMF said. So which means that St. Kitts is performing well below all those regions that we have spoken about. St. Kitts at this point is performing below the world economy, below Latin America, below the larger Caribbean countries, below the Eastern Caribbean countries, and therefore St. Kitts is the lowest performing economy in the Eastern Caribbean as a group as we speak, as today, April 16, 2026. So what do we mean by what we are saying here? If you look at the projection now, by 2026, that is, I am looking at the projection from two, taken from the IMF statement and taken from the World Economic Outlook update, January 2026. Now, it says that the world economy, if they continue doing the same thing they are doing, of course, they didn't see the war. that will change everything, because the war is going to change everything. So we expect when this update, the update that is due for April, I expect IMF producers must be in serious problem now, because they're going to have to go back, because they would have been working on that. They would have to go back and reconstruct this data, because what is happening there, everything, the whole world economy, the production, distribution, and consumption, all that is being disrupted by the decision of Israel and the US. So in a sense, if they had already written the script, they got to go and change that narrative, because where it was calm, it is hell on fire. Okay, so the point that we are making here is, before I say that, let me just try to explain to my listeners what this GDP growth is all about. That's important, and just occurred to me. You see, the GDP is the net sum of everything that is produced or that is spent on. So you can take two views of it. You can take, if you want, a supply side view. That is the net value of everything that is produced. So gross domestic product. Or you can take, it is the net value of everything that is spent. That is the demand side. Now, an annual GDP growth of 2 to 3% is considered normal. In economics, that's considered normal. It means you're basically doing okay. You're doing okay, or you're getting there nicely. A GDP growth above 3% is regarded as a very strong sign that the economy is expanding. So it means that before that war started, the whole economy was beginning to pick up very well, because 3.3. The Latin America and the Caribbean were doing fairly well, 2.4. The Eastern Caribbean as a group were doing well, 3.0. Although a lot of that would be recovery data, because most of these countries, Grenada, Dominica, St. Lucia, they are often hit by storms and wind, so they are always recovering and whatever. So that we can speak at a different time. So when we compare the IMF report, that is the reports before, that is the report for 2023, 2024, the St. Kitts Nevis economy is seriously slowing down. That is what it's showing. And let me just give you the data. In 2023, the GDP growth rate was 4.3. In 2024, it was 1.5. So it has slowed down significantly from 4.3 to 1.5. And of course, the latest that we have here from the IMF team statement, the economy is performed at the same rate, 1.5 in 2025. So IMF projects now, as we said, if things stay the same, by 2026, it will grow by 2.2%. Now, it means currently the economy is performing well below the pre-COVID-19 levels, because before, in 2019, the economy was performing at 4.2, growing at 4.2. Now, let me just go a little deeper in that explaining that GDP growth before I open the line. Let me just try to explain that a little deeper, so that I want people who are not economists, so they can understand it a little better. Let me just do a little GDP growth rate comparison of economies. Now, it's good to compare economies that are similar. For example, even when I said that the OECS countries, they grew by 3%. Is it 3%? Here. Yes, 3%. What we are actually doing, we are comparing to some extent apple with oranges, because some of those countries are middle-income countries. Some of these countries are slightly low middle-income countries and whatever. And St. Kitts is a first world economy. So it is better to compare St. Kitts with those economies that are more like it. That is like Antigua, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados. Now, we are not going to compare Jamaica because Jamaica was hardly hit by Melissa. So we're not going to look at that. That's an aberration. In economics, we take that off the in the equation. We're not going to compare the Bahamas either. Bahamas is really recovering after being very hit the year before. Badly hit. So I am looking at Antigua, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. Antigua grew by 2.5 in 2024. And Antigua grew by another 3.3% in 2025. That is according to the last IMF report, February 2nd, 2026. Trinidad grew by 2.5% in 2024, and in 2020 it grew by only 0.8%. And then that is according to the last IMF report of 10 February 2026. Barbados grew by 4% in 2024 and 2.7% in 2025, according to the last IMF review, June 20, 2025. Now, mind you, let me just explain that. A larger GDP growth does not necessarily mean that the country is getting poorer, No, that is not true, And it doesn't mean that the country is getting less wealthy. And it doesn't mean that the country that has a larger GDP growth for a year has a better level of living or is more developed than the other one. For example, look at Trinidad. Trinidad grew by only 0.8% in 2025, and does that mean that St. Kitts is more wealthy than Trinidad? That is not true. That is not true. Because when we are talking, remember when we talk about the GDP growth rate, we are already talking about a percentage change of the net value of everything that is produced or spent on. So in other words, whatever was produced the previous year compared with what is produced in that current year. So for example, we are talking about, if it is 2025, we are talking about, so we'll take 2024, we'll subtract 2025, and the answer we get, we divide by what we get in 2024. And then we multiply by 100 to get the rate. So what we are really doing, we are looking at the change between one year and another year. That does not compare a country with another. So for example, when you have all those recovery things happening in St. Lucia or in Dominica or Antigua, you can have GDP as large as 12%. And what does that mean? In fact, in most cases in economics, we ignore that. It's too large because it's recovery. So we take it out of the equation because we would not find an average or smooth it with that kind of abnormal figure. All right? So here are two practical examples just before I open the line. So in the case of Trinidad, here what we are saying that for every dollar that it produced in 2024, in 2025, I'm just putting the GDP rate in a language that the ordinary man can understand. For every dollar that it produced in 2024, in 2025, it made only about 1 cent more than 2024. Remember, it was 0.8. Now, in St. Kitts now, in 2023, it made 4 cents for every dollar it produced compared to what it made in 2022. In 2024, it made 2 cents. That is 1.5, because there's nothing like 1.5 cents. It's 2 cents. Well, central bank don't even have 1 cent and 2 cents anymore. If it's that, you don't get it. You don't get it as change. It's 5 cents. But what we are talking about, there is no half cent. So whenever I say half, I say 2. So in 2024, it made 2 cents for every dollar produced compared to 2023. So you see the decline there. In 2025, it made about the same 2 cents for every dollar produced in 2024. So what is the signal that we are getting here? The 1.5 growth in St. Kitts is a signal of what we in economics call a soft landing. That is, St. Kitts is a resilient economy, but St. Kitts is a stagnant economy with very little upward movement. What do we really mean by that? It suggests that as we speak, the St. Kitts economy is avoiding what we call in economics a sharp recession, but it is growing below its potential. That's the point that we are making. That is the point that we are making. So let me just repeat it. It says that the economy is avoiding a sharp recession, 1.5 in 2024, 1.5 in 2024, but it is growing below its potential. So we are going to take an advertisement break, and after the advertisement break, when we return, we'll open the phone lines. I have spoken a lot. I have said a lot. So I am going to open the line and let you speak. If we don't have time to go into the other section, it doesn't matter. I'm not rushing it. So let's take an advertisement break, and then when we come back, we are going to open the line.
FreedomFM1065.com. From St. Kitts and Nevis to the world, Freedom FM 106.5 FM.
Reliable, dependable, Delta. If you live here in St. Kitts and your tank on E, there's only one place that you should be. Maybe driving in Nevis and you need some fuel. Go straight to Delta. Don't be a fool. Get your cooking gas fast. All petroleum needs ULSD. Everyone in the region is shouting, go Delta. Premium gasoline in a fully stocked C-store. So there's only one place you should be. Delta Petroleum, baby.
Every day we're faced with choices. To spend or to save. To delay or to stay on track. It's discipline that shapes our future. Because discipline means making the choice today that pays off tomorrow. Remember, discipline, choice, pays. A message from the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Have you heard that Mind, Body, and Soul is back?
Yes, Mind, Body, and Soul is back on Sundays at 4 p.m. only on Freedom FM, hosted by the inspiring Julie Charles. This is your go-to show for thought-provoking and uplifting conversations. Every Sunday, dive into topics that nourish your mind, body, and soul. From wellness tips to personal growth to deep conversations, Julie brings you the stories that inspire change and spark reflection. Don't miss out. Tune into Minds, Body, and Soul on Sundays at 4 p.m. and let Freedom FM guide you to a more balanced and inspired life. Minds, Body, and Soul on Freedom FM Sundays at 4 p.m.
Get the Freedom FM app now. Just search Freedom FM app on Google Play or the Apple App Store and start listening today.
Welcome back to Issues. You are listening to Freedom FM 106.5. We are broadcasting from Sugar City, St. Kitts. And we are speaking about the St. Kitts and Nevis economy. It's the St. Kitts and Nevis report or statement that was produced by the International Monetary Fund, and that is the statement that normally accompanies the Article 4 mission, which is the external audit of the country. And the statement is normally produced, and then this would be followed by a full-blown report of 40 to 50 pages detailing all the issues on the economy, government business, the financial sector, and then all the recommendation and the prescription made by the IMF as to how to manage the economy, how to deal with government business, etc. Now, we are going to open the line. We're going to open the line, and then following that, if we have the time, we're going to speak about the second part, that is the economic management of the country. Somebody's already online. You on air, please.
Good afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes. I understand your point about not comparing apples and oranges. But could you explain a little more about that growth rate? Because to me, what it suggests, if we're the least in the OECS, for instance, it means if it continues in this vein, others are catching up. Okay? And even for our economy, whether, to me, it's a bit optimistic to call it a first world economy, but even for that, wouldn't you call that somewhat anemic growth?
All right, I'm writing down, yes.
Yeah, right. And more importantly, it would seem that it has been falling from that high you initially told us about when was it, 2019?
2019, and then we'll skip the virus to 2023. You're talking about economic growth of 4.3%.
Right. Yes. And so the trajectory itself is important, and that's why I'm wondering if it's not more serious than we let on. I mean, we could go along merrily thinking that things are fine, when in fact there are some underlying things that really should have been taken care of, that we're not taking care of. And so, what I'm saying is we don't want a false sense of that we're doing okay. Put it that way.
Okay, what I want you to do for me, leave it there for me and let me respond to it, and you can always come back. Huh?
Okay then, sure.
Yeah. I've written it down. I'll come back to it. You on air, please.
Good afternoon, Peter John. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Peter John, my question to you. I just a while ago tune here, listen to you because I like to hear economics and about the downfall of whatever, right?
Yes.
Do you believe that every farmer they must producing in livestock and in ground farming and the small business was performing? You believe we economy will be any better, much better?
I'm writing it down because that's a good question. I will respond. So,
because I believe that locally, when you perform locally in your country, like livestock, you got animal and you sell your food. You ain't got to ship out nothing, send the money nowhere to send goodbye nothing for the exchange.
Correct. I'm writing it down. I'll respond to you. I'll write it down.
Okay. That's my question to you. Yes, that's my question to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll write it down. Yes. Another one is on the... Okay. You on air, please. I'm writing down everything. You on air, please.
Hey, Peter, bon après-midi. Good afternoon, my brother.
Comment do Kachebe?
Oui, moi, not Chebe. No, Peter...
Non, du bout là, ça. Asa mate sav autant boug ka set lisi ka follow programme ça toute l'Amérique, garçon?
Mais Peter, on fait go nom.
Se bouk la kouye mwen kan, se bouk la kouye mwen, ek yo di mwen New York, yo ka follow by sa la gaso, se bouk la, nou pale a presque un whole neditan, un whole hour gaso.
Gaso, kan pou fè pou parti men apre, non?
So talk to me, what happened? What is happening?
Okay, now, Peter, hear this. For me to make the point what I want to make, I want to use during the time of my grandmother. My grandmother used to own a fowl farm. So she would take children for them when they have egg, ma'am, she said. It so happened, Peter, she had about 20 of them. Out of the 20 of disease passed, still about 15 of them. Five left. Now she had about 7 children to send to school. And the little kakada from that is what keeping the family alive. So it so happened, the 5 now, grandma got to leave after that to send her children to school. Now the thing about it with grandma said to the children now, whenever you see you go out, do not ask nothing in the shop. Pull your belly at home. Grandma is trying to say we have to cut down costs by all because the kakada used to come in, it's coming in now. I told you to sink it. We had, I would use the word sell because most people say sell. And money we're making. But now money is not too much in passport. But guess what? The government system still taking people and their toll. It could be a big setback in the economy. When you go, I run in a shop and I got 2 pet workers. I'm making a profit out of the shop. And government paying you to keep those people. That can't be here. It just cannot be here. In everything, government need to step down. But all what you see happening here, Peter, government to slack.
You're talking about the STEP program.
Yes. Peter, you can't tell me Peter running a lot of things, Peter making money, and government got to pay Peter workers too. That can't be right. Another thing, Peter, what is killing this country again, not because of vote, but government needs to put down their foot. You telling me passport money is not coming in like before, and people still look for $500?
Okay, now let me tell you something. I want you to stop there. I have 3 other callers there. Stop. I have written what you said there, and I'm going to stop taking calls now. And I want to respond to those 3 questions because all 3 callers have raised some good issues. So I want to talk about them, and then I'll open the phone again. Is that okay?
No problem, family.
Thanks. Good. So let me begin with you first. The point that the last caller is raising is that it has to do with government fiscal management. In other words, government expenditure. Now, today I am not going to deal with government expenditure. I will wait until the full report is here. I think there is a lot of merit in what the caller is saying. The caller is saying, what is the point of you giving established big business, professional people, lawyers, etc., you giving them step people, you are paying money for them, and then they are making their profit. And if they are big business is not like small business. They are able, when they make their gross profit, they can reduce that if they want, because they can say this is for management fees. Whatever they give to the football, whatever they give to the cricket, they bring it back because it's a tax deduction. So he is saying, the caller is saying, he finds that this is poor management. Now, I did my homework on this thing. I spoke to a number of people who have stepped, and they told me now The government said they don't want to give them SNAP anymore. They say if they want, they have to pay half. And the very same big business and the professional people that they are asking to pay, they have refused. Why? Because they have set the precedent. But I am not going to discuss fiscal. I am going to wait until the report comes. And then I am going to take a full-blown or 2 programs on the fiscal, because the fiscal is very serious. I am not going to deal with it in a cursory way. But thank you very much for the caller for that. Now, the previous caller made a very good point. He is saying the importance of import substitution. He didn't use the words, but that's what he means. In other words, how do you provide for yourself? How do you cut on your import bill? How do you cut on your dependence, for example, right now on the volume that we get out of America? How do you control and develop more savings? He is saying, and also the last caller said that, because he refers to, and I know that I grew on the farm. We had our own cow, we had our own chicken, in fact, when I used to run the area, I had about 50 or so goats following me, and people would marvel at that. So the point is, he's saying, we have stopped providing for ourselves, though we have the land. And even the government that have control of the land, in fact, they are pushing a lot of the land in areas that perhaps Bradshaw would not agree with. They are pushing them into residential. Of course, Bradshaw wanted that. Pushing them into commercial areas. And I have done my homework. Even in areas that were identified for residential, they are commercial. And not just commercial, foreign commercial. But you might say it's not foreign because a number of those people, they are also economic citizens. The point that the caller is making is a very good point. The caller is saying, let government address the issue of import substitution. The area, in other words, your local value added. So the things that you produce for yourself, you don't have to buy it overseas. So at the same time, you are preventing all the money, the hard currency you have from going away. In a sense, if we look, for example, at the data, you look at any national account data, you will see that wholesale and retail is always robust. Why? Buying and selling, particularly food. And notice now, wholesale and retail does not own foreign exchange. Mind you, I want you to open your eyes on that. Wholesale and retail do not own foreign exchange or earn very little foreign exchange, but they are the ones spending the most foreign exchange. So the leakage rate, in other words, a lot of money is leaving, but we are not containing that. That is the point that the second caller was making. We're not containing that by, in a sense, building and producing for ourselves in the area of agriculture, agribusiness, and of course, local manufacturing with high value added. That is the point that he's making. Now, the first caller, before we open the line again, the first caller made a very good point. He said he wants to look at those growth, and I might be, whether I am not I'm taking this thing a little not sufficiently serious, because even if the OECS countries may not, unlike Antigua, may not be on the same way with us, and even if they are, in some other cases, they are always recovering from some kind of disaster and this and that, and the GDP growth rate, the difference from one year to another would be high. But he said, but look at the report, and he is right. The report is, if we just forget about the size and this, the world economy, Latin America, the larger Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean, they are all growing. Barbados, Antigua, and mind you, Barbados was in serious problem. Barbados was so bad when Mayor Motley came in that all the men had they ran away. So God sent a woman, because the men in the Caribbean, they talk a lot of loud talk, but don't worry them. They don't have substance. And some of them, when I say that, they say, oh, you're a man. Of course I'm a man. But if you're a man, you have to behave like a man. And the point is that they ran away. So she took over Barbados Labour Party. That's why last time I said the only Labour Party that is left in the Caribbean, the true Labour Party that can wear red, is Barbados Labour Party. Because most of them have lost their philosophy and their ideology. But let me stay there. At that time, things were so bad. The infrastructure in Barbados had broken down so much that the sewer system had so ruptured that feces, if you want, waste, was moving from Bridgetown, if you know Barbados, in the water down to Oyston. She got all that corrected. The bus service was down. The Princess Margaret was in trouble. Pensioners cannot get paid. In fact, I have a full report. One of these days, I'm going to speak about Maya Motley because I have the report from the IMF. And today, things are so good. The IMF, she have a homegrown program. The IMF have given her a lot of support funds. And the economy is growing, people get their pension and no more sewage problem, and the bus service is back doing well, and the hospitals, whatever. That is women's power. In other words, people who are in power, not just for their pocket. That's the point, I remember I began by saying a few days ago, is what do you see? Do you see the light? Do you see the light? The only light that many of them see from St. Lucia going up where I come from is 5 more years. Well, Mayor is not like that. She doesn't need that to live. She's one of the most intelligent in the Caribbean. She's bright. She's intelligent. She's businesslike. And she has become quite a personality. They gave her all 40 seats. The next one, I think they gave her 28 out of 40. And the last one there, when she was threatened by America, that if she does not take the asylum and the refugees and the deportees, that they would cut their visa, she told them, go to hell. She's not doing that. She went on the platform in Barbados and she told them exactly what America says and what's her position. The people said they agree and they give her all the 40 seats. That is the point. And then I want to say to the first caller, when the full report is out, I intend to take a deeper look into the economy and the fiscal. So we can open back the line. We can open the line. Now, so let me see what time do we have here. It is 2:44. Okay, so we have a caller. You on air, please.
Peter, ça moi vle savoir bagay.
Bon, yeah. Bon, because ou sa pa la présent because moi te vle explainer by se mouna, eh?
Okay, pan problem. Now,
you can go now, yes.
What I want to know, in the IMF report, or the little sketch we expecting, if all goes well, that is the percentage or whatever you're going to receive.
No. You don't mind if I answer you like that?
Yes.
Yeah. IMF is not giving St. Kitts money. When IMF comes to do the review, it's like a business. You're going to have your AGM, but the shareholders will not accept what the accountants and the auditors say because they know some of them use both hands. They must get an auditor from outside. Are you with me?
Yeah.
The auditor would come and look at the same numbers, and then they will tell the AGM if they agree with it. IMF is doing that same job. They are coming to look at the financial sector, look at the banking system, look at social security, look at government and how their taxes and their expenditure and the civil service. They look at the private sector. They look at who is producing that. Look at the workers. Speak to all kind of people. They get the data. And then what they do, like an auditor, they tell you what is the state of the business. They don't give you money, but they will make recommendation for you. Now, there are some of the recommendations I know they make already, but I'm not going to talk about that. I said I am waiting for the full report because the statement we have there is 6 pages, but the IMF report is 40 pages.
No.
Speak to me now.
Mano, Peter, report by Sayo by la MIMF by la. Now, what about the war that war begin deal?
Very nice. Go on. Yes.
Could that system now, that report or whatever sketch it is, can it change?
Brother, most of us are booking television. Put your bad this and say this is a cool election.
That I was thinking.
But you do a good job in St. Lucia, man. Which constituency you belong to?
Where? In St. Lucia?
In St. Lucia.
Gaza just didn't knock myself away.
Okay, let me tell you something. You're making a very good point. You see what is going to happen? The report is only going to give you on the, in other words, the auditor can only tell you about what he see.
Yeah.
So, but the auditor, by the time they did the audit here in St. Kitts, the war had not begun. So it means that when the report come out, and even some of the pages they show, let me tell you something is bad. I want to talk about that yet.
Okay.
But even if they will say it bad, by the time it come back, it will be worse.
By cost of living, even please.
Inflation will prices will skyrocket.
Well, Peter, monogamo.
I don't think you will die, but I don't think you will die. Let me tell you something. The economist says that it is a time that they have never seen before. I began like that. The Rastafarian, because when I live in Jamaica for 3 years, I spent about almost every weekend, I spent time with a group of Rastas down Old Harbour Bay. And I live with those guys for Old Harbour. And the Rastafarian theology says that what is happening there is it is the fall of Babylon. Is the Babylon going to fall? Now, the Christian says that this is both pains because the world is coming to an end. I gave them those 3 perspectives.
Yeah, my Peter. Donald Trump.
I don't speak about this man on my program, man. Just say the President of the United States.
All right, President Lamewick.
Yes.
Grâce à monsieur apporté par mon Dieu pour faire mauvais signe.
Speak in English. Speak in English.
I believe the President of the United States appointed by God to fulfill his mystery and his wickedness, I know some Christian men that like to hear that, but truth is truth.
Coming what? You coming from which perspective? You coming from the Rastafarian fall of Babylon and the establishment of Jah, or you coming from Christian? What you coming from?
Well, I'm going from both because I always believe Babylon.
Well, I'm not running a Christian program here,
No. Well, I'm going from both because you see, the Rastafarian, if we used to follow the Rastafarian movement from way back, the world would be a better world today. I could tell you that much. I could tell you that.
My brethren boy, I know my brethren boy. I mean,
yeah, man. Because
I'm a Jesus man, but I know my brethren and I love them.
Peter, nobody in the Rastafarian, Peter. Me name thing, Peter. But as I tell Peter, the whole thing about it, Babylon gonna fall. And all his children who support Babylon going to fall with Babylon. Now, could the question ask is there still hope? Yes, there's still hope, but we got to till the soil. We can't live business as usual. Otherwise, Peter, we ain't going to see no headway. People got to make up their mind to sacrifice,
and say, well,
That's a good point you're making, because that is what the caller is saying. The caller is saying by now he was expecting to hear from governments in the Caribbean and in St. Kitts. The putting together of a committee to begin to rearrange things. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we respond? They're not saying anything.
But Peter, the President of the United States takes out all the workers in the U.S., look at them, and send them back, making the rich man rich in their own. But Peter, let me bring it home. The question I'm asking, let me forget United, let me forget IMF, let me forget everything. Is it our ready to face the task, to carry this and ready for the betterment for the children and the children to come? My answer to that, Peter, no power way. I thank you, Peter.
But I understand what you're saying there, caller. Somebody's online. Okay, I'll respond to that. You on air, please. This one is gone. Okay. The point that the caller is making, it is, you see, you are calling for the establishment of a program. Somebody's on? Okay. You on air, please.
Yeah, Peter. Question again. I'm going to be last closing. How economical benefit that the tourist industry be to the economy? You know how prosperous it be in the economy? Because every day boat come in and you hear people say, 20 boat coming every minute, the boat and the sea, you know? But we want to know that how profitable that it be to our economy. Come in, getting the taxi drivers, then work, hotel get work, and bars get work. So I want to know how beneficial it be to the economy. All right then, I'll listen after you.
Very nice. I'll answer you. I'm writing it down. Okay, let me answer you now. The last report and the previous report, in fact, I had that in one of my talk show. What has been driving St. Kitts, the production sector that have been driving St. Kitts is tourism and related services. And in a sense, if you look at the economy, the way, when we speak of the economy, we're talking about the whole system of what is produced, what is distributed, and what is used up or consumed. Everything is driven to a large extent by tourism. So therefore, we saw it in the virus. If tourism were to cut today, because there is no other leverage or no other support wing of the economy, we are going to feel it right through. So the thing is, if you know the point that some other callers are making, if you know that is the case, then you need to begin to diversify so that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now, when the money was flowing in for the CBI, by the Citizenship by Investment, because under the previous administration, Douglas, Timothy, Drew, they were getting a lot of money. They did nothing to diversify the economy. Now that the CBI is diving down, the only support that holds this country is tourism. And yet tourism is just a few months in the year. All right. Let me just go back. Let's see how much time you have. Somebody's on? Okay. Let me see how much time that we have. Let's take an advertisement break.
65.com. From St. Kitts and Nevis to the world, Freedom FM, 106.5 FM.
Reliable, dependable, Delta. If you live here in St. Kitts and your tank on E, there's only one place that you should be. Maybe driving in Nevis and you need some fuel. Go straight to Delta. Don't be a fool. Get your cooking gas fast. All petroleum needs ULSD. Every Everyone in the region is shouting, go Delta. Premium gasoline in a fully stocked C-store. So there's only one place you should be, Delta Petroleum, baby.
Every day we're faced with choices: to spend or to save, to delay or to stay on track. It's discipline that shapes our future, because discipline means making the choice today that pays off tomorrow. Remember, discipline, choice, pays. A message from the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Have you heard that Mind, Body, and Soul is back?
Yes, Mind, Body, and Soul is back on Sundays at 4 p.m. only on Freedom FM, hosted by the inspiring Julie Charles. This is your go-to show for thought-provoking and uplifting conversations. Every Sunday, dive into topics that nourish your mind, body, and soul. From wellness tips to personal growth to deep conversations, Julie brings you the stories that inspire change and spark reflection. Don't miss out. Tune into Minds, Body, and Soul on Sundays at 4 p.m. and let Freedom FM guide you to a more balanced and inspired life. Minds, Body, and Soul on Freedom FM Sundays at 4 p.m.
Get the Freedom FM app now. Just search Freedom FM app on Google Play or the Apple App Store and start listening today.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Issues. Now we have here, it is 1:57, so we are about to close the program, but there is someone, we will not be able to deal with the second part, that is how to manage the economy, or who is responsible for managing the economy. But we have one call from the social media. The person asks, when is the next or the full report is due? Normally, remember I explained to you the process. The report, let me see, this one was published in March. We should expect the report if Dr. Drew give the approval. Dr. Drew must give the approval. Remember, under Dr. Harris held all the report, because the reports that were not favorable to him, he did not put them out. That's why I love Douglas. Douglas don't care about that. Whatever report say, he put it out. Do whatever you want. Because, in other words, he does not hold information. So if Dr. Drew does not hold information, and that is a good sign, at least the statement is not exactly favorable to him, but he has released it. So we expect that we are now in March. By the latest, I suspect by May, yes, April, May, I suspect would get the good doctor would release it to us. When it is released, I will get it, because IMF send me the reports into my bucket, whatever report, whatever country. So you will get the report. And if you do not get the report, when I come over the air, I will tell you where to get the report and how to get the report. Okay, now we are going to close up now, because we are not able, because we have only 1 minute, and we are not able to go into the second part of our discussion. Perhaps we will do that next week. We will do that next week before, and if we finish it, we'll go into the another topic. I want to just thank all the people who have called. The participation, you were very hot today. That was very nice. I had to cut you off and then to explain. And I am very happy for the contribution. The questions and the issues that were raised today of very high caliber. I think I am so happy because I'm learning so much from the program, and people call and say they're learning so much. I'm happy. The people who call, the kind of questions and the issues that you raise, they are so intelligent. We discussed today, we took our first little introductory step at the statement put forth by the IMF Article 4 review team, and then that we are waiting, and we only discuss the preliminary figures that they gave us on the performance of the economy, and where they showed us that the economy is not, the economy, so to speak, is stagnant. The economy is performing below its potential. The economy is not in a recession because it recorded 1.5% growth in 2024 and 1.5% growth in 2025. In economics, we call that a soft landing. In other words, it is growing, but it is performing far below its potential, meaning that if it continues so, that it can go into zero. And but IMF, of course, in the preliminary projection, say that it is, if they continue, even if the same program, they can register 2% in 2026. I want to thank you for your participation. This is Coach Adrian saying bye-bye until next week, when we'll continue how or who is responsible for managing the economy of St. Kitts. Bye-bye.